Chapter 10, Part 1, The Divine Manifest Everywhere, Scenes 10:1 to 10:1.
Introduction, the source of all greatness. Scene, the sacred dialogue continues. The dust of Kurukshetra swirls faintly, but in Arjuna's heart, a new calm has begun. Krishna has taken him through the depths of philosophy, from knowledge to devotion, from renunciation to love. Now, in this luminous 10th chapter, he reveals not just wisdom but identity, who he truly is.
Then the tone changes from teaching to revelation. Krishna speaks no longer as merely a guide, but as the infinite consciousness that sustains all existence. He is the origin of all beings, the cause behind all causes, the brilliance within every soul. Hear again my supreme word, he tells Arjuna, for your good I will speak further, since you delight in hearing of me. In ancient India, the sages taught that God is both transcendent beyond the world and immanent dwelling within it. This chapter fuses those two visions. Krishna declares that all that is strong, wise, glorious, or virtuous in any being arises from a spark of his divinity. Every noble quality, courage, compassion, intelligence, artistry, leadership is a reflection of his presence. The divine is not remote, it shines through human excellence. For Arjuna, this is a moment of awe and expansion. He begins to see the battlefield, the warriors, the winds, the sun, all as expressions of Krishna's being. The ordinary world becomes extraordinary when viewed through the lens of divine manifestation.
Now, this teaching is profoundly empowering for the modern seeker. Krishna redefines spirituality not as withdrawal from life, but as recognition of the sacred within it. Your strengths are not accidents. They are channels of divine energy. Your creativity, patience, courage, and empathy are rays of that infinite source expressing through you.
This realization also dissolves pride and inferiority alike. When you see your gifts as divine participation, humility blossoms. When you see others' gifts as divine too, jealousy fades. You begin to celebrate greatness everywhere in artists, scientists, healers, and even quiet hearts who serve with love. The sacred is not rare, it is everywhere waiting to be recognized.
Krishna's revelation thus bridges heaven and earth. To know him is not to escape the world, but to perceive its divine architecture. Every melody, every sunrise, every heartbeat becomes a reminder. All power, wisdom, and beauty spring from the same source.
Focus. Everything noble and powerful is divine energy in action. Root your confidence in connection to that source, for recognizing the divine within is the beginning of real strength. Scene 10.1, the Supreme Word.
Scene, Krishna begins. Hear again my supreme word, O mighty armed Arjuna. I speak to you out of love, desiring your highest good.
Then Krishna's tone is tender yet majestic. He does not speak to command but to bless. The teacher becomes the friend, and the friend reveals himself as God. He calls Arjuna mighty armed, not to flatter, but to remind him of his divine strength, that even his valor comes from the same eternal source. Every word carries both affection and awakening. For Arjuna, this is overwhelming grace. The Lord of the universe addresses him personally, lovingly. Spiritual teaching is no longer abstract, it is the voice of love guiding a friend home. Krishna's compassion here sets the tone. God does not speak from a throne of authority, but from the heart of relationship.
Now, this verse speaks directly to the modern listener. The divine still whispers through love in intuition, in moments of clarity, in the stillness after struggle. The idea of God here is not distant ruler, but caring guide who speaks in the language of experience. When you open your heart with sincerity, wisdom arrives not as command, but as comfort.
Krishna's words remind us that divine teaching is never punishment, it is participation in grace. Life's lessons, however hard, are always for awakening. Focus. The divine speaks through love, not fear. When you are ready to listen, life itself becomes a sacred conversation with God. Scene 10.2, The Unseen Origin.
Scene. Krishna says, "Neither the gods nor the great sages know my origin, for I am the source of all, from whom the gods and sages themselves arise."
Then, here Krishna declares his timelessness. Even the celestial beings, the gods and ancient seers, cannot trace his beginning, for he himself is their origin. He stands beyond creation, time, and cause. The source cannot be explained by what it created. This revelation humbles the intellect and exalts the heart. For Arjuna, this is both awe-inspiring and grounding. The teacher before him is not just another enlightened soul, but the eternal consciousness from which enlightenment itself springs. The humility of this realization silences all debate. The seeker need not measure God, he must simply open to him.
Now, in our age of constant analysis, this teaching restores mystery. We try to define everything, even the sacred, but Krishna reminds us that some truths are to be experienced, not explained. The source of life cannot be contained in theory. The moment you surrender the need to know how, you begin to feel who.
Modern science traces origins outward. Spirituality invites you to trace inward to the consciousness from which thought, love, and awareness arise. That inner stillness is Krishna's presence within you. Focus. The divine has no beginning or limit. To know God, stop defining and start experiencing. The mystery is not to be solved but lived. Scene 10.3. Knowing God as the source.
Scene. Krishna continues. He who knows me as unborn, beginningless, the Lord of all worlds, is freed from all delusion and liberated from sin.
Then, Krishna connects knowledge with liberation. To know him as the eternal source is to be free because delusion thrives only when we mistake the temporary for the eternal. When Arjuna recognizes that everything arises from and returns to Krishna, the fear of loss dissolves. This verse also reveals a deep psychological truth. Suffering arises when we attach identity to what changes. When you know the changeless within all change, you are liberated from anxiety. Arjuna's understanding thus becomes both metaphysical and practical. Spiritual knowledge is freedom from illusion, not accumulation of ideas.
Now, for us, this verse is an antidote to modern confusion. We chase stability in the unstable relationships, possessions, opinions, and wonder why peace fades. Krishna offers a simple realignment. Know your source. You are not your role, success, or story. You are an expression of the eternal consciousness that animates all.
Knowing God as source transforms guilt into gratitude, effort into offering, and fear into faith. Focus. To know your source is to live free. Awareness of the eternal makes you fearless in the changing. Scene 10.4, 10.5. All qualities arise from me.
Scene. Krishna reveals, from me arise intellect, knowledge, freedom from delusion, forgiveness, truth, self-control, tranquility, pleasure and pain, birth and death, fear and fearlessness, non-violence, equanimity, contentment, austerity, charity, fame, and infamy.
Then Krishna expands the revelation from cosmic to personal. Every quality, emotion, and power arises from him. He is the author of both light and shadow, the virtues that elevate and the challenges that refine. For Arjuna, this dissolves pride and guilt alike. Courage, compassion, and even struggle are divine expressions. God is not only in perfection but also in process. This truth transforms how Arjuna sees himself and others. There are no good and bad people, only varying degrees of awakening to the divine source within. Even conflict becomes part of divine evolution, a crucible for the soul's awakening.
Now, in today's world, we often claim ownership of our talents or condemn ourselves for our flaws. Krishna's teaching heals this split. Your strengths are not egoic achievements, but divine gifts. Your weaknesses are not punishments, but invitations to grow closer to your source. When you see all qualities as divine movements, judgment softens into understanding.
This vision invites humility and gratitude. We no longer say, I am great or I am terrible, but the divine is expressing through me in this moment. That awareness itself is liberation. Focus. All qualities arise from the divine. Celebrate strength, learn from weakness, and see every trait as an expression of God's unfolding. Scene 10.6, the ancient line of seers.
Scene. Krishna adds, the 7 great seers and the 4 ancient manas were born from my mind, and from them all beings in the world have descended.
Then Krishna now gives Arjuna a vision of divine continuity. Even the most revered sages, the 7 RSIs and the forefathers of humanity were born of his consciousness. Creation is not random. It is a chain of wisdom flowing from the divine mind into the world. Every civilization, every tradition, every act of learning stems from that original intelligence. For Arjuna, this deepens his reverence. His own role as a warrior of Dharma is no longer personal ambition but participation in an ancient divine current. He sees that Dharma itself, duty, virtue, justice, is sustained by Krishna's will.
Now, for us, this verse reframes human heritage. Every field of wisdom, science, art, philosophy, morality is an echo of divine creativity. The geniuses and reformers of history are not isolated miracles, but sparks of the same infinite consciousness. Recognizing this brings both pride and humility. Pride in belonging to such lineage, humility in remembering the source.
This also transforms education and progress. Learning becomes sacred when we remember its origin. To think, create, and share truth is to serve the divine.
Focus. Every lineage of wisdom and creativity begins in the divine mind. Honor your gifts as part of that timeless inheritance and use them in service of the whole.
Scene 10.7 The Secret of Knowing and Loving.
Scene. Krishna declares, "He who truly knows this supreme truth about my divine manifestations and power is united with me through unwavering devotion. Of this there is no doubt."
Then Krishna now draws the link between knowledge and devotion. To know his divine manifestations is not to collect facts about God, but to experience intimacy with the divine through awareness. Arjuna is being told that understanding the source of all greatness leads to love, not arrogance. The more deeply one sees God's hand in everything, the more devotion naturally flowers. For Arjuna, this transforms learning itself. Knowledge is no longer for control or argument, it becomes a bridge to surrender. When the heart sees that every breath, every victory, every beauty comes from Krishna, it bows in gratitude. The scholar becomes the lover, intellect bows before wonder.
Now, this teaching is a direct message to the modern mind. We live in an age of information, but little devotion, knowing much, feeling little. Krishna restores balance. True knowing humbles. To study life deeply, whether through science, art, or philosophy, should awaken awe, not pride. When you recognize the same divine rhythm behind all creation, worship begins spontaneously.
Real devotion, Krishna says, arises not from emotional excess, but from clear perception. The more you understand how vast, wise, and intimate the divine is, the more your heart rests in trust.
Focus. True knowledge of God leads to love, not pride. When you see the divine behind all greatness, wisdom becomes worship.
Scene 10.8 The Source of All.
Scene. Krishna declares, "I am the source of all creation. Everything proceeds from me. The wise who know this perfectly worship me with all their hearts."
Then, this is one of the most profound declarations in the entire Gita. Krishna reveals himself as the fountainhead of all that exists, material and spiritual, seen and unseen. Everything flows from him and returns to him like rivers merging into the ocean. For Arjuna, the impact is immense. The friend sitting beside him is not only the teacher or charioteer, but the cause of all life, the intelligence guiding planets and hearts alike. And yet, this infinite power is intimate, loving, personal. Realizing this, Arjuna's reverence deepens beyond reason, awe turns to devotion.
Now, this verse speaks directly to our fragmented age. We often separate science from spirituality, creation from creator, intellect from faith. Krishna bridges them all. The same energy that forms galaxies forms you. The mind that organizes your life and the laws that govern stars flow from one consciousness. Recognizing this unity doesn't make you small, it makes you whole.
To know that you arise from divinity gives purpose to everything. Work becomes service, thought becomes prayer, and life becomes celebration. Worship here does not mean ritual alone, but awareness of the sacred pulse running through all things. Focus, everything begins in the divine. When you live from that awareness, devotion becomes your natural state. Scene 10.9 The Joy of the Devotees.
Scene. Krishna continues, "Their thoughts dwell on me. Their lives are surrendered to me. They enlighten one another and ever speak of me. They are constantly content and joyful."
Then, Krishna now describes the inner life of the wise. Their minds rest on him, their hearts overflow with joy, and their community becomes a living temple of remembrance. They inspire one another by sharing truth, and even their conversation becomes meditation. For Arjuna, this paints a beautiful portrait of divine friendship. The path of devotion is not loneliness, but shared celebration. When people gather in sincerity, their unity becomes spiritual strength.
Now, this verse holds a deep lesson for the modern seeker. In a time of social isolation, where relationships often revolve around utility or competition, Krishna shows the beauty of satsang companionship in truth. When people meet to discuss wisdom, share devotion, or serve together, joy multiplies.
Krishna's vision is not monastic withdrawal, but loving participation. When you fill your mind with remembrance of the divine, life becomes naturally radiant. Joy ceases to depend on outer success. It arises from communion with truth.
Focus. Devotion thrives in remembrance and fellowship. Surround yourself with those who uplift your soul, and joy will become your constant state.
Scene 10:10, Guidance through Love.
Scene. Krishna says, "To those who are constantly devoted and who love me, I give the understanding by which they can come to me."
Then, Krishna now reveals how divine grace works. He does not merely bless from afar, he guides from within. For those who live in continuous devotion, wisdom flows effortlessly. Love becomes the bridge between confusion and clarity. For Arjuna, this is the most personal assurance yet. The mind need not master every scripture. Love itself opens the door to understanding. Krishna promises not abstract knowledge, but intuitive direction, the inner voice that says, "This way."
Now, this verse offers immense comfort to today's seekers who struggle with doubt or complexity. You don't need to have all the answers. When your love is sincere, life itself begins to guide you. Intuition sharpens, coincidences align, and challenges become teachers. Krishna's guidance often appears through circumstances, insights, or quiet conviction.
Devotion, then, is not blind faith but dynamic intelligence, a conversation between your heart and the universe. When love deepens, understanding dawns naturally. Focus. When love is constant, guidance becomes clear. Devotion awakens intelligence far deeper than logic. Scene 10:11, Dispelling Darkness.
Scene. Krishna concludes this section. Out of compassion, I dwell in their hearts and destroy the darkness born of ignorance with the lamp of wisdom.
Then, Krishna's compassion shines brightest here. He promises not only to teach but to live within the devotee, guiding from inside as light within the lamp. Ignorance, the root of suffering, is burned away not by external instruction but by inner illumination. The divine is not a far-off savior but the indwelling presence that transforms. For Arjuna, this is the fulfillment of all teaching. The goal of the path is not to find God outside but to awaken him within. Once that light kindles, the darkness of fear, confusion, and guilt cannot survive.
Now, in the modern world, where people seek meaning in endless noise, this verse is profoundly healing. Wisdom is not a product of accumulation, but of awakening. The divine already lives within. Devotion removes the dust covering that truth.
This verse also offers deep emotional comfort. You are never alone. Every moment of clarity, forgiveness, or courage is Krishna shining through your heart. His compassion is not selective. It reaches anyone who seeks sincerely.
Focus. God dwells in your heart as light. When love opens the door, wisdom drives out every shadow.
Closing summary, the divine manifests everywhere.
Scene. As the chapter's first part concludes, the battlefield fades and revelation shines. Arjuna sits in silent awe. The friend before him is no longer just a charioteer or teacher, but the very pulse of the cosmos, the source behind every breath, every virtue, every truth.
Then, Krishna began by calling Arjuna beloved, scene 10:1, assuring him that these words arise from love. He then declared that even gods and sages cannot grasp his origin, scene 10:2, because he is the beginningless source of all. Those who know him as such become free from delusion, scene 10:3. From him arise all qualities of mind and heart, intellect, forgiveness, fear and fearlessness, truth and compassion, scenes 10:4, 10:5. Even the great seers and manus, the progenitors of humankind, emerge from his divine consciousness, scene 10:6.
He then explains that true knowledge of his manifestations leads to unwavering devotion, scene 10:7. To know that everything flows from him inspires worship, not pride, scene 10.8. The wise delight in sharing his remembrance and live in constant joy, scene 10.9. For such hearts, Krishna gives direct understanding inner wisdom that leads them back to him, scene 10.10.
Now, these verses redefine both divinity and self. Krishna is not a distant ruler, but the very source animating life. Every strength, talent, and insight is his expression. Recognizing this shifts how we see ourselves and others. Arrogance fades, gratitude grows. The competitive world softens into cooperation when we realize that all power shares one origin. For modern seekers, this truth transforms daily life. The courage to act, the patience to love, the clarity to decide all are divine collaborations. Spirituality ceases to be escape, it becomes empowerment. Every workplace, home, and challenge turns into a field of worship when you remember the source behind your strength.
This vision also ends loneliness. You are never apart from God. You are an expression of Him. When fear arises, remember, the light that sustains stars sustains you. When doubt clouds your path, listen inward. Wisdom already lives within.
Krishna's closing assurance is the eternal promise of the Gita. I dwell in the hearts of my devotees. The source of guidance, peace, and courage is already inside. The task is not to reach far, but to remember deeply. Focus. All greatness flows from the divine. Remember your source in every thought and act. When confidence roots in connection, strength becomes sacred and life becomes divine expression.